Are we living in a new world order? Is Africa becoming a destination for outsourced asylum? And regional instability abounds, oh my. Welcome to the world this week. Hi there, I'm Mandisa. Welcome to our very first weekly recap, where we'll go beyond the headlines and our daily shorts to connect the dots on the global stories that have real geopolitical impact. We're not just listing events, we're explaining the power dynamics, the economic consequences, and the strategic shifts that will define our future. So, let's begin. Our first story is the week's primary geopolitical fault line, the explicit challenge to the US-led world order by China and Russia. This wasn't just another meeting, it was a declaration. And frankly, it was the final push I needed to start this channel. Now, to understand why this matters, we have to recognize the world we've all lived in. If you're watching this, you've likely only experienced one global hierarchy, a system shaped by the end of World War II and solidified by the Cold War. For decades, this world has been unipolar, with the United States and its Western allies firmly at its center, setting the rules, governing the financial systems, and anchoring global security. But last week, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, we saw something different. Russia and China, two powers purposefully outside of that central group, stood up and announced unequivocally that things are changing. They are no longer just challenging the rules, they are publicly building the framework for a new set of rules entirely. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, or SCO Summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping stated that global governance has reached a new crossroads. And though he didn't mention the USA by name, he also stated in quotes, "We must continue to take a clear stand against hegemonism and power politics and practice true multilateralism." His sentiments were, of course, echoed by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Other leaders like Prime Minister Modi of India were also in attendance and even vouched to fix their relationship with China, even though they have some disputes. Some analysts argue that Trump's 50% tariffs on India may have helped this along. If you want details of the story, please check out the shorts, which I will link. But that's not all. The summit was shortly followed by China's military parade celebrating the end of World War II in Asia and showed China's weaponry and military, while President Xi was flanked by Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Now, this does not mean the world order collapsed overnight. Everything you know hasn't suddenly changed. But what it does mean is this: the slow, years-long creep toward a multipolar world may be accelerating into a sprint. The nations most willing to shake the foundations of the existing order are now openly declaring their intentions. And they are finding a more receptive audience. Look at the global landscape. Policies like the tariffs from the Trump administration force many countries to look for alternatives outside of the Western-led system. Now, those strategic calculations are hardening into new alliances. This is the real takeaway. The steady rise of groups like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS isn't just about meetings and statements. It's a clear signal that a significant bloc of nations is not just willing, but is actively banding together to put their own strategic and economic needs first. They are building the architecture of the world where the scale is no longer tipped so decisively toward Western dominance. I must say, as a person of the global south and an African, I'm not naive to believe that this tide will rise with us all. But I also understand the possibilities of a world where we are not beholden to just one power, where choices may exist even if none of them are truly what we believe we should strive for. The center of gravity is shifting, and we all need to be paying attention. While the great powers are reshaping the global order, regional conflicts are also escalating, threatening to pull them in. This was clear in two major flashpoints this week. So let's jump right into them. First, a shocking Israeli strike on Hamas leadership in Doha in Qatar, which is a dramatic escalation that violates a key US ally sovereignty and risks a much wider war. And second, in Africa, Ethiopia is charging ahead with its Grand Renaissance Dam on the Nile, ignoring a dire new warning from Egypt and bringing the two nations closer to a conflict over water than ever before. So let's start with the strike in Doha. The facts are clear. Israel has taken full responsibility for an attack on the soil of a nation that is both a key US ally and a central mediating power in the region. The White House, significantly, has been quick to state it was not involved. But the story here goes far beyond a single headline. This is part of a much broader and more dangerous pattern. Since the start of 2023, Israel has conducted strikes across 7 different countries. This isn't an isolated event, it seems to be turning into a campaign. And that campaign is having a devastating effect on regional stability. As multiple regional organizations and governments have pointed out, this pattern of escalation risks triggering a much wider conflict, pulling in actors who can no longer stand by. The choice of location is what makes the strike so significant. Targeting Qatar isn't just targeting any country, it's targeting the diplomatic room itself. It signals that even the neutral ground of negotiation is now vulnerable. It suggests that in this current climate, no venue, no mediator, and no alliance structure may be off limits. This is, in fact, a profound shift, and it's a developing story we will be watching very closely. Now, onto another critical flashpoint, the Eastern Nile River Basin. This week, Ethiopia unveiled the completed Grand Renaissance Dam, a monumental achievement. It's Africa's largest hydroelectric project, a 14-year endeavor funded by its own people, symbolizing national pride and a path to energy independence. But for its downstream neighbors, this achievement represents a profound threat. Egypt and Sudan are utterly dependent on the Nile. For Egypt, it is the nation's lifeline, providing over 90% of its water for agriculture, drinking, and industry. Sudan relies on it for the same critical needs. This week, the two nations released a joint statement calling the dam a continuous threat to regional stability. This, like most regional conflicts, did not happen overnight. A 2015 treaty was meant to establish fair rules, but negotiations have repeatedly stalled. Even US mediation efforts in 2019 failed to break the deadlock. We are now at an impasse so dangerous that the International Crisis Group has warned of a potential armed conflict. This brings us to the core of the issue. A fight over arguably the world's most vital resource, water. Sudan and Egypt cannot afford to see their supply diminish. Ethiopia believes it has every right to use this resource to lift its people out of poverty. It is a tragic, zero-sum dilemma, and it perfectly illustrates the kind of water wars experts have warned about for decades. A warning I remember hearing vividly from my own professors in my days as a student of international relations. This is more than a political dispute. It's a battle for survival and sovereignty, and it is absolutely a situation that demands our close attention to see if diplomacy can finally prevail over escalation. And finally, a story you likely missed, but one that reveals a disturbing new trend in global immigration policy: the deportation of asylum seekers to third countries. This week, the United States deported 7 individuals to Rwanda. This makes Rwanda the 4th African nation after Eswatini, Sudan, and Uganda to become a destination under this new model. But the crucial context is this: The US is not acting alone. This is a coordinated shift. We also the United Kingdom attempting to send migrants to Rwanda, and Germany considering the same idea. Italy has sent migrants to Cyprus, and Australia's policy of offshore processing in Nauru was so severe, the UN Human Rights Committee ruled it constituted arbitrary detention and human rights violations. This practice, often called outsourcing asylum, raises grave legal and ethical questions. Human rights organizations universally condemn it as a potential violation of non-refoulement, which is the cornerstone of international refugee law, which forbids returning people to countries where they face danger. On the one hand, Western nations are effectively paying to export a complex political problem. On the other, recipient countries are becoming complicit in a system activists warn strips migrants of their rights to a fair trial and leaves them stranded in distant lands with no recourse. So the question we're left with is this: are we witnessing the systematic erosion of the global refugee protection system by wealthy nations? And is the future of asylum not found at a nation's border, but auctioned off to the highest bidder elsewhere? This may not be a front page story today, but it is a quiet, fundamental rewriting of the rules of human mobility. And thus, we have to take a look at it.